Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome to the first monthly Patrons Q&A. I'm going to try and do this once a month, just as a means of, getting to know some of you a bit better, giving me an opportunity to talk about some other things, and also provide an additional reward for my S-rank patrons who are generously supporting me at the higher tier. So basically how this is going to work is early in the month I will put up a post for S-rank patrons, inviting them to submit some questions, and then towards the end of the month I'll record a video answering some of them. So we're just trialing this this month. We didn't have a ton of time to get questions together, but we've got a few, so I thought it'd be fun to talk through some of them and see what we've got. So the first question, jumping straight in with a question from Chris Caskey, my podcasting partner in crime and very good friend. His question is, the only question worth answering, risky or ROTTY? It's a difficult one. I'm a big fan of all the Shantae characters. To be honest, risky definitely has her appeals, and she's got the sexiest name in the series, definitely. There's just something incredibly sexy about the name Risky Boots that I really like. But I think if I had to pick one, I think it would have to be ROTTY. I like a bad girl, but I think just the sort of wholesome and silly side of ROTTY just appeals to me a bit more. She's just a slightly more appealing character to me, I think, even with the the bits dropping off and well, that's enough really. That's a deal breaker for some people, but yeah, I think I would probably have to go with ROTTY just because I find that she complements Shantae well. As well, when you're playing the Shantae games, anytime that Shantae encounters ROTTY, there's always some wonderful dialogue between the two of them, and that makes her very appealing. She strikes me as someone who would be a fun friend to have around, someone you would have a lot of banter with, someone who would probably trash talk you while playing video games, someone who, when you were just hanging out with them, you could just sort of casually insult each other and it would be absolutely fine. That for me is always the sign of a good friendship, is you could be absolutely vile to each other, and that's perfectly fine, because that's what you do as friends. You should hear some of the trash talk that comes up around our board gaming table. Well, I would say on a fortnightly basis, but obviously that hasn't been able to be a thing for quite a long time, which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, when we were able to get together and play board games semi-regularly, there was always a lot of absolutely disgusting foul language thrown on the table on a regular basis, and ROTTY just strikes me as someone who would be well into that sort of thing. It's very in keeping with my sense of humor and how I engage with my friends. You know, I've talked a bit about this in various places, but as someone who sort of has social anxiety as a result of Asperger's, it takes me a little while to open up to people, but that does mean that when I open up to someone that I feel very close to them and very attached to them. And one sign for me of that is exactly what I was just talking about. And this is going slightly off on a tangent, I know, but I think it's a good opportunity to talk about it because, as I say, ROTTY strikes me as a character who would be that kind of friend, who would be open to listening to you. She would make you feel at ease, and you'd just be able to have a good time with her without having to sort of really worry about what you were saying or anything like that. Or she could just pull her head off and throw it at you. So my answer to that question then is ROTTY. Right, question number 2 comes from Flame Chocobo. What is your favourite Mario game? A nice short and simple question there. Not necessarily a simple answer though, because I tend to find it's what I'm in the mood for. Sometimes I am just in the mood to replay Super Mario World on the Super NES. That game will always be special to me because it was really the first game I played on a console that was my own. Up until I had my Super NES, all of my gaming had been on home computers. It had all been on Atari 8-bit and Atari ST. And occasionally, when my brother came home from his job working in magazines, he would bring home a Mega Drive or a Super Famicom or whatever he was writing about at the time. But the Super NES, when it came out in Europe, was my first console. And Super Mario World was the first game I had with it, along with SimCity, if I remember correctly. So Super Mario World will always be special to me. I'm not 100% sure it's my favourite though. Thinking about it, the Mario game that I consistently look back on most fondly out of all of them, out of all the possible sub-series and all the, excluding the spin-offs, I guess, out of all of the mainline Mario games, whether they're the 3D ones, the 2D ones, the new Super Mario Brothers or whatever, I think my favourite is Super Mario 3D World on the Wii U. And I believe that's, is it out on Switch yet? It's certainly coming to Switch. I can't remember if it's actually out yet or not. But yeah, Super Mario 3D World for Wii U for a long time. Well, as long as it's been available, has been my favourite Mario game. It's just such a wonderfully designed game. It's got a wonderful soundtrack, which is something that's super important to me in any game really, but especially in a gameplay-centric game like Mario. It's got lovely level design. I enjoy the power-ups. The cat power-up is a lot of fun. The Mega Mushroom's a lot of fun. And I really dig the way the levels are designed in that they never forget that you're playing a video game. They're not trying to create a coherent world or anything like that. Each level is self-contained. It's a video game level. It presents you with a challenge. It's floating in space. The reason for that doesn't matter. It's because it's a game and because it's fun. And Super Mario 3D World never forgets that fun aspect. Super Mario 3D World is also the best example of one of Nintendo's kind of core game design tenets that I like to talk about quite a bit, which is how they never overuse mechanics and gimmicks. So in Super Mario World, you'll have a level that makes use of a particular type of block, like the flashing blocks that go in time with the music, for example. They'll be there for one level, and then maybe one of the sort of super hard challenge stages that you unlock after you've beaten the main game. But they're never overused. They don't keep coming up repeatedly. You just see them maybe once or twice in the whole game, and that's it. And the rest of the game, you're doing other stuff. It keeps things constantly interesting. You never dread seeing a particular obstacle that you had trouble with, because after you've overcome that obstacle for the first time, that tends to be it until you get into optional content, which is great. And then in the levels where those obstacles are implemented, you tend to find that it introduces them to you in a fairly safe environment where you can't die if you interact with them incorrectly. And then as the level progresses, you'll have to deal with them in increasingly dangerous situations. And that, to me, I think is really beautiful level design, because it gives you the opportunity to learn something new, apply that knowledge, and then challenge yourself as well, which is a really nice three-step process that gives one level at a time a really nice sense of rhythm and pace to it. And that's something that Nintendo has always been absolutely fantastic at. And Super Mario 3D World is one of the best examples of that I can think of. It's really tight focus on level-based design rather than trying to be open world or anything like that. Really helps with that. And that's why it's my favourite, I think. Okay, moving on. We've got two questions from Misty here, so I'll take these one at a time. The first one is, I would love to know how much time on average do you devote to gaming versus writing posts and making videos daily? Seems like you're running a pretty rigorous schedule, writing thousands of words daily on top of working full-time and gaming. Yeah, so I work full-time at the moment. I would like to be able to do Mario Gamer full-time, but obviously that's not a super realistic option in the short term. It's something I can maybe build towards over the long term, but in the short term, I need a full-time job to be able to pay my way, to be able to pay the mortgage, to be able to pay the bills, feed the cats, feed myself, and buy video games. And so yeah, that takes up a decent amount of my day. But what I found during the whole COVID situation, while we're all working from home, I find that during periods of downtime that would just be completely wasted time in the office, I can actually make good use of that time to do something else. I can do some research for articles, I can plan out things for videos, I can gather screenshots, I can capture footage, I can just spend some more time playing a game that I need to sort of get a bit better feel for before I write about it or make a video about it. So yeah, the day job isn't as much of a barrier to doing what I do as it could be. But even when I was in the office, I was still managing to do roughly the same amount as I'm doing now. In fact, in some cases, I was doing a little bit more. I ended up cutting back a little bit on the long playthroughs just to give myself a little bit more free time. But basically how I work it is that I do my working day, and sort of stuff that is urgent for the day job takes priority. And then anything I can squeeze into the working day, I'll do then. Other than that, when the working day finishes, then it's time for Mario Gamer. So after I've done my day job, I will settle down and I will devote some time to writing something on Mario Gamer. And I've committed myself to writing at least one thing per day for Mario Gamer. At the moment, that tends to be writing like a one-off article about a retro game on the Evercade or the PC Engine Mini or something like that, because that's a nice, easy, steady stream of stuff that I can write about every day without having to do, without having to do tons and tons of research beforehand. So I can spend a bit of time playing the game over the sort of days and weeks beforehand. On the day of actually writing something about it, I can sit down with WordPress. I can open up various pages to do a bit of research, find out a bit of background about the game, because I always like to incorporate a bit of historical background when I'm writing about something as well. And then I sit down and I just write about it until it's done. And the amount of time that takes varies very much depending on the game. So some articles take a lot longer than others. The sort of cover game and mega feature articles take a lot longer, obviously, because they tend to require not just a bit more research, but also a bit more in the way of critical thinking, I guess, because I make a point of the stuff I choose for cover games and mega features is stuff that has a lot of depth to it. So it's stuff that needs a lot of analysis, whether that's from a mechanical perspective or from a narrative perspective. So I tend to find that those take the longest to write, which is why I tend to do them on Fridays. Because it's the end of the week, I don't have anything to worry about the following day. It doesn't matter if I stay up late on a Friday night. I can just sit down, and as long as it takes, I can just sit and write. And those are very often the things that I enjoy writing the most, because I can just dedicate my time to it. I can really enjoy doing what I do and just get on with it. And I tend to do stuff in a single sitting for those. So I know some people sort of write a bit of a draft and then leave it aside for a little while and then come back to it later, or in some cases never come back to it. I don't work like that. I've never worked like that. I've never followed sort of the suggested method of writing that like we were all taught at school and in university and stuff, which is to sort of plan things out, write a structure, write an outline, all that sort of thing. I've never done that ever in school or in university, and I got perfectly good marks for it. So it's always worked for me. So I just sit down. I think of what I want to write about. I think of roughly what I want to say, but I don't sort of do any more in the way of planning than that. And I tend to find that as I write, additional points come to me as I'm writing, and I can then incorporate those into what I've been writing at various points. And that gives it a nice natural flow as we go along. Yeah, so that's basically how it works. So after I've finished my day job work for the day, I will sit down and do Mario Gamer. Sometimes we'll have dinner first, depending on if the wife is doing anything with her Final Fantasy 14 buddies afterwards. Otherwise, I'll have dinner either partway through writing or after I've written it. And then after that, it's gaming time. So I will spend the rest of the evening just as time for myself, so enjoying whatever I want to do. Usually playing whatever I am studying for the current cover game feature or the mega feature, but also in some cases sort of playing some other more substantial stuff that I would like to write about at some point in the near future. So at the moment I'm juggling the Atelier games and also a few Xbox 360 games that I want to write about. There's Warriors of ROTTY 2 I started writing about recently. Dead Rising I want to write about something very soon. Quantum Theory, which is a third-person shooter by the guy behind the Project Zero and Fatal Frame series. So yeah, I'll spend my time in the evening playing one of those things, usually, unless I feel like just sitting back and relaxing with something fairly mindless, in which case I'll boot up a retro compilation or something like that and just have some arcade-style fun. As for videos, what I tend to do is I record those all in bulk at a weekend. So as I'm recording this today, the rest of my time today after I've recorded this, I'll record a couple of Atari A to Z videos, a couple of Atari ST A to Z videos, a couple of Atari A to Z flashback videos, a couple of short plays, and a couple of Evercade A to Z videos. So I don't know if I'll do them all today in one day, but I've got the whole weekend ahead of me to do that. And The format of things I do doesn't tend to require a huge amount of editing afterwards as well, which is partly why I do things the way I do. But yeah, recording is the sort of time sensitive bit. And that's one of the reasons why I stopped doing the long playthroughs as well, because recording sessions for those were taking such a long time that it was tiring me out and not giving me sort of the energy I wanted to be able to do other things. Now, there's other ways I could do that. I could like record one video in the evening or something like that. But I found that devoting some time at the weekend and getting a couple of weeks worth of stuff done in advance seems to work the best for me, because that means that the evenings in the week I can devote purely to Moe Gamer. And that also means that on a weekend where we have a podcast to do, because doing a podcast tends to take up the entire weekend because we have to record it, and then I'd have to spend pretty much most of the following day editing it in most cases. So I don't want other recording commitments when I have a podcast weekend. So it's always good to have at least a couple in the bag ready to go and ready to publish at any point. So yeah, that's how it works. The TLDR version of that is that I write Moe Gamer in the evenings and I make videos at weekends. So there you go. Misty's second question was, another thing I've noticed is a peculiar absence of anything Kingdom Hearts related on Moe Gamer, considering you've written at length about other Square Enix franchises like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. What's your stance on Kingdom Hearts? I really like Kingdom Hearts, and I have done sort of since I played the original PS2 versions. The reason I haven't written anything about it is because I want to give it the mega feature treatment. I would like to play all of them in succession in sort of narrative order, and I would like to write about them as I do that. So that is going to be a substantial project. Not quite as substantial as the Atelier one, because that was like 16, 17 games or something like that. So it's going to be a lot by the time that's finished. Kingdom Hearts is slightly less, but I think each of those games does have the potential to be a little bit longer as well. So it's still going to be a fairly substantial project. So I'll be doing that as a mega feature at some point in the near future after Atelier is over and done with. And I'll probably do a few one-off cover games after Atelier is over, just to give me a slight sort of rest from the long-term features. But yeah, that's definitely in the works. So, and I really enjoy Kingdom Hearts. I think it does some really interesting things with game design and narrative design and sort of threading a coherent narrative through lots of different games as well. And it's also one of those series that there's not a lot of serious analysis about on the internet as well, at least not in written form. There's a fair few sort of video essays and stuff on it, but in written form, it's one of those series that tends to sort of get explored very much on a surface level by game journalists and so on. And that's partly because the games are such a time commitment, and having the full knowledge of all the previous games is quite a big ask as well, especially if you're sort of hiring a freelancer to do a review or something like that. So yeah, so I want to give that the time and attention it deserves, but it is coming. So watch out for that in the near future. Okay, final question then, from Ken. Ken's question is actually quite similar to Misty's, but it's a slightly different twist, so I'll answer it separately. Ken's question was, what more than anything else has helped you to maintain your motivation to write, record and play on a daily basis? Simple answer to that is I just love it. I love video games. I have done since an early age. I think they're important. I think they're incredibly valuable from a cultural perspective, and I want to give something back. I've had sort of so much enjoyment from video games over the years that I want to do something for them. I've spent some time previously in the past fiddling around with game development, using various tools ranging from STOS Basic on the Atari ST to Click and Play, Games Factory, Multimedia Fusion, RPG Maker, Visual Novel Maker and that sort of thing. And I enjoy playing with those tools. But I tend to find at some point I hit a bit of either a creative or a motivational wall with those. And so I tend to very rarely finish a project that I'm doing with those, which I always think is a bit of a shame. There's a lot of projects I'd like to return to at some point that are sort of half finished in various pieces of software from over the years. But for now, the one thing that I do that I am confident about is my writing. And to a slightly lesser extent, my video. I was very nervous about doing video to begin with, but I've developed a real enjoyment of that now. And I hope that comes across in sort of the differences between my current videos and the stuff I was doing when I started. I hope I come across as a lot more confident and knowledgeable and authoritative or whatever than I did, without sort of sacrificing my own personality as well. And I've had several people sort of compliment my commentary on things, including some original developers of games, which is always lovely to see. There was Bill Dunleavy, one of the creators of Time Bandit, actually stopped by my Time Bandit video the other day to compliment it and offer a few insights about the game. So that was always lovely to see. So yeah, my main motivation is to give something back to this medium that has given me so much over the years. It's helped me out. It's helped me through some dark times. I've written on Moe Gamer about how video games have probably saved my life on more than one occasion. So it's the least I can do to show some appreciation for the experiences that are important to me, but also the experiences that tend to go unsung and underappreciated. I've mentioned on the Moe Gamer podcast and in a few places previously that one of the community things I used to do was back in the days when oneup.com was current. My brother was running that site at the time, and they had a podcast called One Up Yours. And part of one of the episodes that they were trying to do is they introduced the concept of the pile of shame, which is the pile of games that you stack up, they gather dust, and you never play them, but you always feel guilty every time you look at it, hence shame. And the intention behind this segment was for them to pick a game off that list, and then sort of book club style, they all go away and play it, and then come back the following week and talk about it. Now, for one reason or another, that never actually happened on the podcast because they all had plenty of other things to do. But those of us who were populating the oneup.com radio boards at the time, we decided that we'd take up the challenge instead. So we took the first game that they were going to do with this challenge, which was Psychonauts. And we all played it, and we all talked about it in a forum thread, and we had a great time. So that became sort of a regular thing on the boards. So we would pick a game by popular vote that was something that one of us had heard of, but hadn't enjoyed a lot of mainstream attention for one reason or another. And so we would pick that, and then we would play through it together, and we would talk about it. Mostly from a perspective of what was this game trying to do? Did it achieve it? What did we find particularly interesting about it, and that sort of thing? So a very sort of positive angle on things. So if you read my article that I republished recently that was about John Updike's Rules of Literary Criticism, which is about sort of specifically looking for the good within and bearing in mind authorial intention rather than necessarily immediate visceral reaction to something. That was very much what we did there. We would take the time to actually delve into these games, figure out what made them tick, why they were worth exploring when they hadn't had a lot of mainstream attention before that, and we went from there. Now, for one reason or another, we all sort of drifted apart over the years, which was a great shame because we had a really fun podcast that a lot of people enjoyed back then, the archives of which are still available on my SoundCloud if you want to listen back to those. But yeah, that gave me a real taste for picking out the overlooked and underappreciated games from throughout gaming history. And I wanted to carry on that because that was something I always enjoyed doing with the people that I was podcasting with then and discussing with the forum posts. And it was something that I could quite easily carry on doing myself. I'd always been a fan of writing about things. I have professional experience writing in the games industry. And while I'm not directly involved in the games industry now, I may as well do it myself. And so Moe Gamer started initially as an attempt to continue what I was doing on US Gamer, which was making a site that was welcoming and friendly to otaku gamers, so fans of games with anime art styles and that sort of thing. But over time that sort of really expanded into something closer to what the original mission of those forum threads and those podcasts were, which is to highlight and explore games which, for one reason or another, haven't had the time of day that they deserve. And that's motivation for me. Experiences I've had that are great, that no one's heard of, I love writing about them because occasionally someone comes to me and says, oh, that game you wrote about, I tried it and I really like it. Why has no one talked about this? Anytime someone says that, it is fantastic. It's one of the most wonderful feelings. But even if no one was reading, I've said this numerous times, even if no one was reading, I still want to show my appreciation for those experiences. I still want to write about stuff that has impacted me in some way because video gaming has always been such an important part of my life that while I have the means and the motivation, I guess, to celebrate it and appreciate it and say thank you to the people who have created such special experiences in my life, it's what I want to do. It's what I want to do. I want to keep showing that appreciation, and that's what my work's all about, really. I'm not about tearing anything down. I want to build up. I want more people to know about these great experiences. I want more people to keep an open mind about certain things, which is sadly in short supply these days. And yeah, that's basically it. So my motivation is from enjoyment and love, basically. Right. That is all of the questions that I've had this time around. So thank you very much to those S-Rank patrons who kindly submitted questions. Once we're into December, I will put up another post for S-Rank patrons who can submit their questions. If you're not a patron already, you can stop by patreon.com/Pete Davison to join the club. If you're a A-Rank patron at the minute, you can always upgrade to S-Rank at any time, and that gives you the opportunity to ask some of these questions, and also gets you monthly wallpapers as well. Or if you just want to support at A-Rank level, you get access to my daily blathering blog posts about anything in particular as well. So if you want to get to know me a bit better, that's a good way of doing that. So patreon.com/Pete Davison if you want to find out more about that. So it just remains for me to say for this first Q&A session, as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.